Good morning. It still is morning. That was Salted. You heard she's just got the windows in front of me. She was just there. Just getting ready to go to sleep now. I just had a little mid-morning snack, so she's settling down to sleep. Anyway, two things I wanted to talk about, all to do with last night. It was very late, so I didn't really get to do anything until now. One was, me and the other half, we watched this thing called Springburn, the Rome of the North. I know, yeah, that's a rather grandiose title for Springburn. Even the guy doing the thing was going like, I think this might be a little bit, tiny little bit of an idea above its station, but bear with us. It's not the title I gave it per se. It's the title I've gone with for this presentation, but you know. Anyway, he's a Springburn local, born and raised, and it was a really amazing presentation because it was part of this, what is usually the days out thing, or the open doors thing where you can go and look at places and see things that that are not usually open to the public, or not open to the public in a way that it usually is. So like in past things they've had, you could see the sort of back closed off areas of the Mitchell Library, and I think that, this year the plan was, I think they were still going to have someone go up, because they were doing this thing where they were offering somebody the chance to do it, and someone was going to be like picked to do it and go up Finiston Crane, which would be amazing. So there's all that kind of stuff, you can go to the things that are open that you can see. Just as an example, I think you can probably get, I assume it's usually closed off, but you see things like the Lord Provost House and things like that, and you could just go to places and view things that you normally wouldn't anyway because of everything that's happening this year. The open doors thing is having to not really work the way it usually does. I think this thing would have been probably a talk that would have happened, say, in Springburn Park or something. I don't know. It would have been a physical thing, but on this occasion it was a Zoom presentation. So it was pretty much all about the history of Springburn, which was absolutely fascinating. I really enjoyed watching this thing because I didn't, obviously being a new local, I didn't know the history. So it was about just the way the district kind of flourished, and how initially it wasn't even deemed to be part of Glasgow. You could see the expanse of the bordering of Glasgow itself to then eventually encompass Springburn and other parts to the south and parts west, and just how you see the kind of expanse of urban sprawl, for want of a better term, and it really is like the train age, the locomotive that gets Springburn underway as a kind of huge hub, industrial age, without it, I guess, you know, it wouldn't, well, probably wouldn't, it would, I was going to say it wouldn't be the place it is today, but it's not the place it used to be, which was the really tragic thing about it, was just the decline of it and the decline of population. And it took me back to this thing that I saw. I read this thing that Alistair Gray had written that they published in the Scotsman in 2012 about the how they had, he used this great term, like he said that you first devastate to then restorate, kind of thing. Like he was sort of going like, and he was referring to Sight Hill with this. So, you know, I mean, the Springburn and Sight Hill are kind of, you know, side by side. The kind of main bit of the sort of town or the centre of Springburn borders Sight Hill Cemetery to one end of it. So that had the relevance as well. And Sight Hill's under this big redevelopment thing, like massive. Like, I was just reading it again this morning. It's like £250 million redevelopment. Like, it's just huge. And within Alistair Gray's piece, I was reading that it was going to be this kind of youth Olympics village thing. That was the plan for all this new housing that's being built there. It was going to be used as this, you know, would they put in this bid for the Youth Olympics, which was meant to happen in 2018. I don't know whether, I'm not sure whether it happened, whether the bid was successful. I mean, he said if the bid was successful, it was going to be the village for the athletes for the Youth Olympics, and if it wasn't successful, then it would just go straight to being housing. And they've done strange things, like I'm sure it was still here. Maybe it wasn't. I'm sure it was still erect as a church when I was first looking into like the place. But St. Rollick's Church has been taken down, and then there's a new church, which is kind of weird. And then there's all this stuff. There's this, you know, they put like all this new parkland on the opposite side of the cemetery, but it's all like just fenced off, and maybe they're just doing it so like the trees establish enough or something, and you know, it just establishes itself enough as something before I don't know why it's all like fenced off, and it's really strange. Anyway, so there is like opposite where the big Tesco Extra is on the other side at St. Rollick's, is just this huge kind of space of them doing whatever. I assume they're still building houses there. And just to see that in this presentation, to see how Springburn was, and just how, I mean, you got these, it was like railway locomotive buildings central, like just two major what do you call them like it's kind of like rolling stock places, like one sort of like up one end and then another right there, and then there's oh hello. He scared me because usually you'll make a noise and he just like creeped up behind me. Um, so like I mean, all that you see, all that I see that's left, and even that sounds like it's not really used or anything. I don't know. I always, it always sounds like Bless This House to me when that goes off. One moment. Sorry about that. Anyway, where was I don't know where I was. um, Obviously talking about Springburn. And some Rolex and Side Hill and all the stuff around my my bit. My bit of Glasgow. um, I don't know where I was anyway, but like it was really fascinating. Oh yeah, the convergence of like these locomotive making places, and that's how I got to my initial interest in seeing this thing was hopefully there would be some talk about the winter gardens because I didn't realize it was such an amazing structure. I mean, when we went to Springburn Park a few weeks back, I just was stunned that the winter gardens look so incredible. I just looked at it and I wanted to cry. I couldn't believe it was allowed to get to that level of disrepair and just sit there wasting away. It's just so tragic. Um, and so that was where my interest of watching this thing came from. Wanted to learn a little bit more about the history of it too. Um, it's been in that kind of level of disrepair since 83. There was a storm in 83 and there'd been some damage done to it. And then when they looked to see, to assess the damage and what needed to be done to it, they realised that actually the level of disrepair it had got to was more severe than anticipated. Um, so it kind of, they had to remove certain bits of the roof because it was deemed that unsafe that they just kind of removed, I think, the rest of the glass that was there, and then it's just fallen into decline since then. Um, but it's like kind of like the last sort of remnant that they can save, really, because these other amazing buildings, like I gotta get it. Was the Northern Locomotive. So I should remember, but I can't remember it now. But there was like this huge factory there, like well, offices and just amazing building there, and like there were so many amazing buildings there. I mean, it was just the history of Stobbill Hospital and the clock tower and the sort of kind of residential place next to it, and just there's just so much has disappeared, so much amazing wonderful things. And yeah, I mean it was great to like just be educated on all the history of it, and but then it was really kind of sad to just see the rate of decline, and that, you know, not everything is like, oh, they were all like really crappy tenements and they just got rid of them all, and you know, and then it improved it. It's not like you can look at Springburn now and go, oh, Springburn's a really thriving place. It isn't. It's just, it really died. Like, but it died not even when the locomotives stopped being produced. It kind of, that led to its decline, but it kind of, you know, yay, Thatcher's Britain, that's when it died, you know, that's when it really died. I mean, then the population just takes a dive from 55,000 in the early 80s to just, I mean, it's like 25,000 now. And you just see, I don't know, it just seemed like it was just decimated. It's really sad the way you see how Springburn High Street is now. It's just kind of comparing it to the way pictures were looking, and how bustling and thriving it was, and what a lovely community it was, and just, and then there was things that I kind of learned about, like when we went to the park and I'm seeing the statue of James Reed, and I'm going, well, who's this dude? I got to find out who this dude was last night, and why that the statue is there, and the importance of him and the other two main sort of locomotive manufacturing guys who were kind of worked in unison for a while, and then established their own separate places and their own separate firms. And right at the end, it was really, God, that was really kind of profound and strange, that right at the end, because the guy who was presenting it was showing snippets of videos and things, and he showed this snippet at the end, like he was referencing this thing called Diamonds Were Forever. Sorry, just a minute. Yeah, sorry about the final bit of the thing, which was like, oh, it was so kind of just, right. So he kept on referencing little bits of sections of this video called Diamonds Were Forever, about the locomotive industry here, and well, here in Springburn, down the road. And so he ended with, like, even though the factories are gone and everything, and you know, some of the locomotives still live on, and they ship them all around the world. So there are ones in Cuba, and there are ones in South Africa, and they went to Canada and New Zealand and Australia. And the end bit of footage were these 3 humongous locomotives just like going along these tracks in Oz, and it just is just crazy that I'm sitting like just down the road from where these factories were producing these. I mean, literally just down the road. I mean, we live just near Hawthorne Street, and at the end of Hawthorne Street is Springburn, and um, and where the convergence of these factories were. So I'm just sitting here going, God, they're just down the road and they build those and then they go off to Oz, and you know, it's just the way that it just makes it feel like such a small world, you know. Yeah, and so I'm wondering now, like from just being back there, whether those, because there were a couple of huge locomotives in the Riverside Museum. They must have been locally produced ones. I wanted to ask, but I didn't get to ask that. But the thing is the proposal for, and this was the wonderful bit of all the stuff, that all the sadness, really, because there were really sad aspects to it. Just seeing amazing buildings being demolished and no longer existing and stuff, and that Springburn's a kind of shell of itself, how it used to be, and but there could be salvation. There could be salvation for the Winter Gardens, which would be amazing, amazing. They want to get like a full, or they budget it to be a £4 million restoration. They went for lottery funding a couple of years back and failed to get the funding, but they want to put another funding application in and hope it will succeed. And if it does, they want it to be like a kind of multi sort of use thing. So it would be a potential concert venue, or at least a performance space of any kind, you know, concerts, theatre, etc. Have a cafe and a restaurant near it. Also still have it function in one part of it as a winter garden still. And it would just be, oh God, be amazing, be wonderful. I mean, it looks, the projections of how it could look if it does get restored is just amazing. And the guy who was presenting it said that he had been in contact, or he got contacted by King Creosote, and that he would, if this restoration goes ahead and it opened up as a concert venue, he would do a performance of From Scotland with Love on opening night. That would be so fucking amazing. That would just be, oh, it'd just be incredible to just think that I could just walk down the road and watch that. It would be just ace. So yeah, I mean, just it had such a wonderful ending from the kind of like, oh, look at just how glorious it was, and then the decline, and then the beyond decline, decimation of like putting the motorway through it, and then just, you know, it was. But then that, you know, there is that tangible thing of like something could be resurrected or restored, or there could be a remnant left, and it could be really amazing. And I really, really hope, because it is just that the Winter Gardens building is just amazing. It is just such a beautiful thing. I mean, you can just see it. I mean, he was saying in it, he was going, oh, it looks like some pancreastation, or like, it just, it could be so glorious again. It'd be so lovely. I really, really hope they succeed in getting the funding that they need, because it would just be so awesome. And the other thing is that I want to talk about the MainMan podcast. I've been forgetting about, like, listening in and starting to listen to it. And I started listening to it last night. Oh, just everything I imagined it would be. Everything I was hoping it would be. I listened to the first 2 episodes and I so wanted to move on, but I was too tired and I needed to get to sleep. But I listened to the 2 parts of them talking to Tony Zanetta and Z, as he's called, and it was just amazing. And just hearing this stuff, and you just think, it sounds so hedonistic and incredible. It would have been just amazing. And then the next episode they're talking to Dana Gillespie, which I guess will probably maybe spread over another 2 episodes, I'm guessing. I think eventually, from what I could detect and what I could hear, I think they actually, I think the last episode, the most recent episode they've done, was actually talk with Tony DeFries, which will be interesting. I can't say, I hold Mr. DeFries in the biggest amount of esteem. But, I mean, I suppose he got the job done, I guess. Gotta give him that. I highly recommend listening to the MainMan podcast if you haven't done so already or weren't aware of it. I shall link again with this, and you can dive in, wrap your lug holes around it. I'm trying very hard not to just wanting to OD on it, because there is only seven episodes so far, and I've already devoured 2. I just want it to be my little nightly thing now. Oh, it's just gonna go so quick now. Anyway, those are the bits. And it's creeping up to half an hour. I know I didn't spend much time on the Bowie thing, but hey, or on the MainMan thing, but you can just go off and think it was the Springburn thing. It was just such a great thing last night. Well, I went for 2 hours, but I was entertained for those 2 hours. It just ended in such a great thing of hope for the future, which is always good.